Are you neurodivergent and do you have a hobby graveyard? Many of us, autistics and ADHDers, go through a variety of interests in our lifetimes, and this is often a sign that we are multi-passionate. ADHDers in particular tend to oscillate through a variety of interests at a rapid pace because we have dopamine dysregulation. We like to get our dopamine fix through new passions, and before we know it, we've hyper-focused on a specific interest. We've started developing an intense fascination in this particular interest or hobby or pastime. We start teaching ourselves and trying to rapidly upskill and become very competent at whatever the interest is, or become highly knowledgeable. We invest a lot of money and time into this new interest. We buy all the top gear. We do all the research on the best options related to that interest. And then we invest, we go whole hog, and then 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, a couple of years later, it loses its luster. The novelty and stimulation goes out of it, just like air out of a balloon that's been popped. And we find we've suddenly moved on and want to go to a next interest. And we're left with a bunch of equipment, textbooks, reading materials, resources related to that we now have to offload. And we've invested all this money into this interest and we suddenly don't want to pursue it. We might have a membership or a subscription, a vehicle, a boat, equipment, whatever it is, and suddenly we don't have any use for it because it doesn't give us that fix anymore. And so we have to sell it, often at a loss. It's hard. These things don't appreciate value over time. They depreciate quite rapidly. And if we're too, executive function challenged, we might not even do that. We'll just start accruing all the equipment that we bought through our various interests, and they linger in boxes in under the bed or in the basement or the garage. And then we've moved on to our next interest, and it was like we always deeply love this interest, and now we've discovered it, and it is the be-all and end-all. It is the one. If you can draw a comparison between this belief that we have that there is a one person out there for us, this passion becomes the one for us. And it serves a function. It can enrich our lives. It can connect us with people. It can deepen our knowledge. And often what happens is, from the outside, people see us skipping between different interests and we seem scattered, unfocused, non-committal, and it looks like a negative reflection on our character, when really it's just an indication that we might have different needs in terms of fulfilling our interests, getting our stimulation, our daily dose of novelty. And that pursuit of novelty is what leads us to dispose of these hobbies, interests, fascinations, pastimes, and that's what contributes to having a huge graveyard of hobbies that we've left behind us. And we tend to go through them at a faster rate, so the frequency of the interest that we dispose of is greater than what you probably see in the larger population, the neurotypical population. And it's hard not to look at that from our own perspective and also from the perspective of outsiders and maybe feel a little bit of shame or embarrassment about it, because we can be going full bore into a passion and believing it is the be-all and end-all, and not that long later, it's meh. Like, we just don't care about it anymore. And all that money, it's like, what did we invest it in if we're just going to abandon the pastime or the interest or hobby anyway? And I think that's a very reductionistic take, because we've gotten our stimulation, our novelty. We found a way to regulate our dopamine dysregulation through our hobbies and our interests. And we found fulfillment, enrichment through those passions, and hopefully mutual engagement. We found connections with other people through those interests, other people who share the same interests. So there can be lots of fringe benefits to these hobbies. It's not necessarily bad that we jump between them. It does hurt the pocketbook. Spending all this money investing in the outlay of our new passion can take its toll financially, but it serves a vital function in terms of fulfilling that need, connecting us with other people, hopefully. And I think it's easy to slip into this deficit mindset that ableism forces upon us and look at all of this and be critical and judgmental of ourselves, because certainly we do get that from other people. Other people may see us oscillating through careers, through pastimes, and jumping between different interests, and think that we are flaky, that we can't make up our mind, that we can't settle, that we're indecisive. And maybe that's true to some extent, but I think it's a lot more complex than these simple reductionistic hot takes from outsiders who don't understand the neurology of people who are neurodivergent, particularly ADHDers, and don't have any empathy or compassion for how we operate and how we get our needs met. Nobody's going to come in and say, hey, I see you have this deficit of dopamine or this dysregulation of your dopamine levels. Here's some stimulation. Here's your daily dose of novelty. we'll treat you with this and we'll address this, and then you can manage and function, so-called function, like everybody else. Read, meaning here, you're showing up like a neurotypical and functioning like a neurotypical. We aren't wired that way, and fighting that just has, triggers backlash. It's like pulling a rubber band, and it will snap back eventually if we try to resist that. If we don't try to regulate our dopamine levels, then we end up splurging and going out of control because we're trying to meet this deficit or this dysregulation, address this dysregulation. So, like, rejecting our neurology when we know it skews a certain way doesn't help us. Leaning into it as best we can, with moderation in mind, as best and moderate as you can be, being, let's say, ADHD. Maybe something like a balance can be approached. I don't know if it can ever necessarily be attained. So the ADHD or neurodivergent hobby graveyard is a real phenomenon, and there's little chance of us abandoning that and us shifting away from that. It's going to be a reality for many of us. I think we just have to roll with it, accept it's part of our reality, it's part of our wiring, and maybe if we can approach it with some moderation, then we will have less regrets in terms of the money and outlay that we've invested in certain hobbies and then abandoned. And if we've had certain rules about being intentional before we invest and go whole hog into something, it's very easy to be consumed by this single-minded, narrow focus that we get into, where we're like, yep, I have to do this. This is my new dopamine source. I'm going to tap it to the most I possibly can. I'm going to invest as much as I possibly can. If we can have some kind of rules and regulations to kind of counterbalance that, okay, I'm going to wait a month and see if this hobby sticks before I go and start financially investing in equipment. Rules like that can kind of help moderate the other consequences, the financial consequences of a hobby. Do you have hobbies that you've left behind, or pastimes or interests that you were completely consumed by and deeply passionate about and then abandoned quite suddenly, and then found yourself hyper-focusing on something else? What's your graveyard look like? What are the interests that you've loved and then left behind? And what do you do to moderate it? Like, what are the measures you've put in place, the limits that you set, or the boundaries you have around it to stop yourself going into excess and approaching it from if possible, a moderate way? I would love to hear from you. Tell me all about your experiences.